So to start, my name's Alexis. I have a master's of science in clinical mental health counseling. So if you're wondering, what do I know about mindfulness? I have learned a lot about it in my schooling, and I also practice this almost daily on my own and with clients as a therapist. So mindfulness is something that I am kind of constantly involved in and very passionate about. So, the learning objectives for today, just a quick overview of what we'll be doing. We're going to learn what mindfulness is and where it comes from. So, kind of some history of mindfulness and how it came to the United States. And we're going to learn how stress and worry can impact us and work and everyday life, and how to implement mindfulness techniques into your life so that they can alleviate stress. And then we're going to practice some mindfulness together, and I'm going to give some resources on some different mindfulness techniques. And we'll do an activity uh, towards the end. And then there will be time for questions at the end, as I said. So if you have a pen and paper, if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to write them down. Great. So first, let's think about what is mindfulness. If you want to write down what this means to you right now, what you think mindfulness is, um, or you can just think of it in your head. And in a minute or so, once you gather your thoughts about what mindfulness is, we'll kind of go into detail about it. But with your current understanding of mindfulness, what do you think it means? And this picture is a hint, and it's also just kind of a funny graphic. So you can look at the picture for a hint if you don't know anything about mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? By definition, just general definition, mindfulness is the practice of gently focusing your attention and awareness on the present by focusing moment to moment on what's happening right now. Um, so, some keywords when discussing mindfulness, these are just things that I'll say or things you might have heard before when people have talked about mindfulness. And I just kind of want to outline them in terms of what it means in relation to mindfulness. So, meditation comes up a lot in mindfulness. And some people might have written that down when they were thinking about what mindfulness means. Meditation has kind of everyone has a different idea of what meditation can look like. Some people think meditation is sitting under a tree and clearing all your thoughts out of your head. And that surely is meditation and can be meditation, but meditation can also be sitting in your desk and trying to meditate that way. And it can be guided by someone helping you meditate. And then grounding comes up also a lot when talking about mindfulness. And grounding is in reference to bringing our senses back to the present. So, sight, sound, touch, maybe taste. Um, we're bringing those senses back to the present moment. So, when we're talking about grounding, we're talking about either bringing all of those senses back to the present moment, or maybe some of them or one of them. And there's kind of two types of mindfulness. There's more formal mindfulness practices and then more informal. And those basically just mean like more structured versus unstructured, or maybe last minute versus planned. So formal might be like setting up a yoga class or um, setting out time in your day to do a mindfulness activity, and maybe it's a longer activity. An informal type might be doing something at your desk while you're at work or doing something on your drive home. So, the history of mindfulness is kind of interesting, and I think it's important to point out where we get these ideas from. So, mindfulness has roots in Buddhist and Hindu traditions, as well as yogic practices, which also come from um, the same region, ancient India. Um, the word mindfulness and attention and awareness comes from a Sanskrit word sati, which means attention and awareness. Um, and fun fact, I do have a picture of Buddha here. Um, this is just a fun fact I thought I would share because I don't think a lot of people know this, but a lot of people think that the ringlets on Buddha's head are his hair. But sometimes you'll see Buddha statues without those ringlets, and it's actually kind of a story that the ringlets are actually snails. And as Buddha was meditating for a long time one day, 108 snails were said to snake the way up and sit on his head to keep him cool while he was meditating. So that's kind of a fun fact you can take away and tell people that those are said to be snails on Buddha's head and not his hair. So, how mindfulness came to the Western world in the 1970s, a man, Jean Kabat-Zinn, founded the Center for Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, and he kind of set the foundation for other mindfulness-based therapies and groups. Um, and I just think it's important to kind of pay homage to the people that brought these things to the light in the United States. And then thereafter, in the last 15, 20 years or so, there's been a lot of studies on mindfulness, and it's been proven to work to reduce stress and build stress tolerances. And so that's how it's become more popular in recent years because the research has shown that it does work. So now that we've introduced kind of mindfulness and where that comes from, we're going to talk about stress a little bit. So I want you to think about what is stress for you and what stress looks like for you. Um, Everyone's idea of stress is going to be different. It might look different for you than it does for me. And there's different levels of stress, which we'll talk about in a second. But just kind of think about what stress looks like for you. You could write it down, could keep it in your head. Are you getting angry and irritable when you're stressed? You have trouble sleeping, trouble focusing? Just kind of think about what that looks like. So with stress, there's kind of different levels of stress, as I mentioned, and you can see on the graph, there's level of stress and then performance level is kind of associated with that. And that can just be in daily activities, work, school, or with relationships and your capacity to socialize, really anything. Stress affects almost every aspect of our lives. So there's actually good stress called eustress, and that involves maybe some excitement, motivation, a sense of accomplishment. So maybe you have a big deadline coming up for work, or you're doing some volunteer activity where you have something that you're working on, a big project, and that might cause a little bit of stress, but it's keeping you excited, it's keeping you motivated, and maybe you're feeling really accomplished because it's just a little bit of fire underneath you and you're just feeling really motivated to do things and get stuff done, but it's not overwhelming and you're not feeling dread or anxiety. At a certain point, we might have other things going on. We might have multiple projects due at once, or there might be some family issue going on, or any other circumstance. And especially when these things layer, we can find ourselves becoming more and more stressed. So we start to reach a point where we're kind of distressed. It's not so good. We might feel dread or anxiety. We might have physiological issues. And some of those physiological issues might be some things you identified earlier as what stress might look like for you. That could be headaches, that could be muscle tension, fatigue, sleep disturbances, irritability, mood swings, depression, forgetfulness, lack of motivation. So you can really see that at a certain point, there might be too much stress, and our bodies might not know how to respond to that. So it manifests in things like headaches, muscle tension, fatigue, etc. And so we want to kind of figure out what are the signs that you might be getting to that point, and what can we do about it when we are at that point. So stress and performance. How stress impacts our brains, bodies, and overall functioning. All the symptoms I mentioned before, like worsened concentration, headaches, or muscle aches. You could even get an upset stomach. And sometimes stress actually suppresses our immune system. So we might find ourselves becoming more sick. Um, the stress hormones that are involved in the brain and the body when we become um, in the high levels of stress are cortisol and adrenaline. And those can make us feel uh, in ways that we don't want to necessarily feel if our body doesn't need those extra hormones for survival. That's what our bodies are pushing them out for. It's our body's biological way of keeping us safe, but sometimes our brain and body can't distinguish how real a threat is, and in consequence, we sometimes get extra hormones that make us feel um, maybe lower energy, or we get headaches or muscle tension, things like that. So, how can we identify when we are stressed and when we should do something about it? You can watch for the signs of stress. You can ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? If you start to feel worked up, that kind of brings in the first piece of mindfulness. Bring your attention back to right now and ask, how am I feeling right now? Notice how you're feeling. And then from there, you can take steps forward. But bringing the attention back to how you're feeling right now is important to kind of pause those maybe racing thoughts or um, high stress symptoms. So, this is kind of how mindfulness can help. So, the APA have found mindfulness and meditation can change our brains and our biology in positive ways, including reducing stress, anxiety, and depression, reducing pain or fatigue, body pain, um, and fatigue, and building more tolerant stress response. So, I think an important note here is that by doing mindfulness more often, we can actually build our brain and body's tolerance to how much stress we can take before we reach a point where we start having those symptoms of stress and maybe are more irritable and can't focus. So, with that being said, I kind of want to practice some mindfulness. So, we're going to do a meditation, and not All mindfulness is meditation, but we're going to do that activity. And then afterwards, I will also give you some other mindfulness activities that you could try on your own. So, this activity is, I like to call it leaves on a stream meditation. So, what you're going to do is sit in a comfortable position and either close your eyes or rest them gently on a fixed spot in the room. Maybe start to feel how your body feels where you're sitting. Is anything uncomfortable? Is your chair really soft? Focus your attention to your senses. Now visualize yourself sitting beside a gently flowing stream with leaves floating along the surface of the water. Maybe you notice the colors of the leaves. Are they red? Are they green? Yellow? Visualize these leaves floating down the stream. For the next few minutes, take each thought that enters your mind and place it on a leaf. Let that leaf float by with your thought sitting atop of it. Do this with each thought that comes through your mind, whether it's pleasurable, painful, or neutral. Even if you have a joyous or enthusiastic thought, place them on the leaf and let them float by. As you continue to let your thoughts float by atop the leaves, visualize the surroundings of the stream. Is there rocks? Notice the colors of the leaves again. Is there sun? Is there mist? Continue to watch the leaves float down the stream, placing new thoughts on new leaves as they come in. If your thoughts momentarily stop, continue to watch the stream. Sooner or later, your thoughts will start up again. Allow the stream to flow at its own pace. Don't try to speed it up and rush your thoughts along. You're not trying to rush the leaves along or get rid of your thoughts. You're allowing them to come and go at their own pace. Your mind might be saying, I'm bored or I'm not doing this right. You can place those thoughts on the leaves as well. Let them pass. If a leaf gets stuck, allow it to hang around until it's ready to float by. If the thought comes up again, watch it float by another time. If a difficult or painful feeling arises, simply acknowledge it. Say to yourself, I notice myself having a feeling of boredom or impatience or frustration. Place those thoughts on leaves and allow them to float along. From time to time, your thoughts may hook you and distract you from being fully present in this exercise. This is normal. As soon as you realize that you have become sidetracked, gently bring your attention back to the visualization. You can bring awareness back to your senses by wiggling your fingers or your toes. Maybe you feel the fabric of your shirt. Notice how that feels. Is it soft? Is it itchy or scratchy? And as you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes. Take a moment to notice your surroundings. Maybe look at the small details, colors of the things around you, textures, sounds. And as you move around a little more in your chair, you can bring your attention back to the presentation. So that was an example of a guided meditation exercise. And like I said before, there's different types of meditations. But guided meditations are very accessible and something that you can find, many of us can find on our phones, or if you don't have a phone, computers or tablets.
To control a video device with your voice, you need to connect it first. In the Alexa app, go to Settings, and then TV and Video to get started.
Now we're going to look at some breathing exercises. So some of us might have done some breathing exercises before. I'm just gonna talk about three that are very accessible. Breathing exercises are a really accessible, and by accessible, I mean that you can do them almost anywhere. Mindfulness activity that can really help you bring your awareness back to the present moment. So the first one is just mindful breathing, just simply paying attention to your breathing, not trying to alter it, but maybe paying more attention to it. So you might breathe in and just notice how that feels in your body, and breathe out and notice how that feels as well. And you might keep doing that for several minutes or maybe 30 seconds, depending on how much time you have. But just paying attention to your breathing. The other one is oceanic breathing or ujjayi um, pranayama, which is a yogic term, um, which just means oceanic breathing. And this style of breathing is meant to kind of prolong your breath. So with that, you breathe in through your nose and you're kind of almost constricting the airflow to make the breath longer. So you might try to count, or you can just simply think about making the breath longer and deeper and feeling that breath come in through your belly. So you breathe in through your nose, make that breath in as long as you can and out through your mouth. And as you sigh out the breath, you'll notice that it might sound kind of like waves on the sand at a beach. And that is why it's called oceanic breathing. So, this style of breathing is also really good for getting a lot of oxygen into our bodies, which is good when you're doing any type of exercise or physical activity, which is why they use this in yogic practices a lot. The other one that I like to do is square breathing, sometimes also called box breathing. There might be other names for it as well, but we'll call it square breathing for today. Square breathing is something you can visualize, or something you can do on paper as well. It can help to involve other senses. But looking at this picture, we can see the square, and what you're going to do is breathe in for 4 seconds, and then you're going to hold your breath for 4 seconds. And then you're going to breathe out for 4 seconds, and you're going to hold for 4 seconds and repeat that cycle. So you're kind of creating a box or a square, which is why it's called square breathing. So we can practice that a couple of times. This one's also pretty easy for people to remember. So we'll try that. So we'll breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Again, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. So again, these are all a part of mindfulness practices that you can do pretty much everywhere. We're always breathing, so breathing exercises are a great way to bring awareness to something that we're always doing. Um, and something that, like I said, can be done anywhere and maybe discreetly. So if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed or stressed in a situation, but you don't really know how to come back to present, and maybe you need to focus but aren't really sure how, breathing exercises could be a great step to bringing your attention back to where you want it to be. So another type of mindfulness activity that is good to do on your own is journaling. There are lots of different resources for journaling. You can simply Google or whatever search engine you use mindfulness journaling prompts, and it will give you prompts that you could write down ahead of time. And then as you're journaling, you just answer the prompts. But you also could ask yourself in mindful journaling, how are you feeling? How is your body feeling right now? And you can ask yourself these questions right now. And you can write it down if you would like, or you can just answer in your head. So how is your body feeling right now? Is there any muscle tension anywhere? Is there a tag somewhere on your clothes that's bothering you? Is your body feeling well rested? Maybe you're feeling tired. Just notice how your body is feeling. And you can do that for your mind as well. Are your thoughts helpful? Are your thoughts positive today? Or maybe negative or stressful? Maybe you have a headache. Just notice sensations. And you can write them down or just think about it. What you notice about how your body is feeling. And you can bring that awareness externally as well. How does your body feel where you're sitting? Can you feel the weight of your body in the chair? And if you're adjusting in your seat, how does that feel on your back or on your sit bones? And this is the kind of questions you can ask yourself when journaling. Or if you don't have access to journaling, you can ask yourself these questions as well, or find them in a guided meditation. But again, mindful journaling is about noticing and being present, and journaling can be a very present activity where you're focusing on what you're doing. And you can use things like Google or prompted journals, or you can do unprompted journaling, just writing how you're feeling, as we just thought about how our bodies and minds felt in our surroundings. You can do that on your own as well. Like I said, you are also able to find mindfulness journaling prompts and ideas just about anywhere online. I know that positive psychology has a lot of journaling prompts if that's something that anyone's interested in. Some other ways to incorporate mindfulness, just noticing and intentionally paying attention to surroundings or activities when engaging in simple daily tasks. So, what that could look like is walking from work to your car, maybe even just in the parking lot, and noticing how the sun might feel on your skin and paying attention to those feelings, maybe hearing the leaves rustle, but just intentionally bringing your focus to small details, even if it's just for a couple of minutes throughout the day. You can do this while eating. Many of us will try to multitask, maybe answer some emails or go on our phones while eating. That's a time of day where we also could focus on the details of how our water feels or the food we're eating and what it tastes like. What are the textures? And you can do this with any activity that you do daily. Like I said, walking from your car to work, in the parking lot, or just sitting at your desk, as we did earlier, kind of feeling any textures of our clothes or feeling how our bodies feel or externally. How does our chair feel? What am I noticing around the room? Maybe you're looking at the details of the colors of your pens or sticky notes, or you're looking outside at specific leaves. And there's also meditation, as we've talked about, different types of meditation, mindful journaling, as we had talked about as well, and walks. Walks. Some people will go on walks with others, or play music, or listen to an audiobook, or things like that when we're on walks. But we can also make part of our walks maybe more mindful, or set aside time of day to go on a walk where we are just noticing our surroundings, our thoughts, and again, how our bodies feel. And in doing these things, you might notice you feel thirsty or hungry. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in work or our stress that we forget these things that we need to take care of for ourselves. So, in doing mindful activities and allowing your brain to have a break from wandering thoughts, you might be tending more to your body. So, you might notice you're thirsty and you might have some water or get a snack. Just allow yourself to be present. Allow yourself to step away from distractions. And that is what mindfulness practices are about. And they don't have to be formal. Like I said, they can be going to yoga or um, setting aside a large chunk of time in the day to do these practices. But you can also do them at your desk or on your car ride to work or walking in the parking lot or even in the elevator. So, some resources on mindfulness. Um, the Stanford Health Library um, has many mindfulness meditation resources. So they have guided meditation audios that you can listen to. Mindfulness.com also has a lot of information if you're just curious about mindfulness and what mindfulness is on a deeper level. That's a great spot to get more information on that stuff. And then YouTube, Spotify, and Audible, things like that. I'm sure I'm missing a couple. Apple Music, resources like that on our phones or laptops or tablets. Again, those can be really useful for finding mindfulness podcasts or meditations. There's lots of guided meditations on Spotify and YouTube, I know. And you can pick out ones that are longer or shorter, but that can be an easy way to incorporate mindfulness into your lunch break or on your way home from work.